Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Elaine, and thank you, Mr. President, and everyone else for just inviting me to come here and giving such a warm welcome so far. So I thought that we would talk about the main subject, which is what are some ways in which the blockchain space, which I think these days it's not just the blockchain space. These days, ZK technology, the new buzzword, is becoming almost as important as blockchains are. Can be helpful to Palau and to some of the things that have been talked about in the last half hour about what Palau is trying to achieve. So to start off, just recap of things that are already happening, right? So there's the Palau ID, right? So digital residency, which is this is something that more and more countries are really starting to look into, which I think is a very positive trend, right? So I as was mentioned, I have one of these Palau IDs myself. It's actually right over here. You can look at it. But it's over the last I think like 5 or 10 years, we've been seeing more and more countries start to have these kinds of programs, and they generally happen for all kinds of different reasons, right? Like countries are interested in attracting people and especially interesting people to come and sometimes stay in person. Also sometimes try to create some kind of digital presence, right? So the e-Estonia effort that's happened over the last 10 years kind of strikes me as a bit of an inspiration here, right? Even back 10 years ago, the Estonian government was saying things like, sorry, like saying things, I apologize. There we go. Saying things like talking about how the future of nations is that they cannot just be physical nations, they also need to be digital nations, and really trying to explore the question of like, what would it look like for Estonia to become a digital nation, right? And so they offered this digital residency program where anyone around the world could apply, could become a digital resident, and digital residents could do all kinds of things, right? You could open a bank account. If you are also physically Estonian, you could use digital residency certificates to vote. There's start a company, I think, was another one that's possible. Just all kinds of services, right? And this actually provided all kinds of value to many kinds of people in the world, right? Like there's a lot of people for whom it was just a very easy and accessible path just to do things like set up businesses that are inside of the EU, right? And it's empowered a lot of people around the world whose home countries either had weaker infrastructure or had repressive governments or all kinds of things, and it just gave them a new opportunity to thrive. So I think there's a lot of value in these kinds of programs. There's also a lot of value in just giving people more options in terms of physical residency. There's an increasing number of nomads. There's an increasing number of people who are thinking about taking a more active choice in which country they live and base themselves, and sometimes even settle in for the long term. Like sometimes by choice and sometimes out of necessity, unfortunately. But in either case, it's very valuable to just have there be countries around the world that give people more options. And so I think these things are valuable. But the other interesting thing that distinguishes the Palau program, of course, is the blockchain component, right? It's not just a card; it's an NFT on chain. It's you can digitally prove that you have one. And being on chain is nice because it gives, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it gives you the ability to interface with the rest of the on-chain Ethereum ecosystem, right? So if you have other kinds of Ethereum applications, that you need to, you know, need some way to like verify that someone is a unique person, that needs some way to verify to what extent a particular person can be trusted. Like many different kinds of applications, they can just directly immediately plug into something like this, right? So I think this is valuable, and like I think especially in the age of AI that's getting more powerful and very quickly over the next couple of decades, one of the many things that's really valuable to have is just more different and effective ways for people to prove that they're actually people, right? Like 10 years ago, you could prove that you're uh, 10 years ago, you could prove that you're a person just by, clicking on all the pictures that have a giraffe. These days, the robots can do it, right? 5 years ago, you could prove that you're a person by, writing an essay about the history of Pacific Island nations. These days, robots can do that too, right? So having, just more and better ways for us to identify, like, who actually is a person and is just something that's valuable to preserve our ability to continue to communicate with and to continue to trust each other. So that's something that I think is one of the big reasons why specifically having these kinds of digital things is useful, right? And if it's just because it's tied directly into the Ethereum ecosystem, like these are just digital proofs that become very easy to use, right? In addition to just proofs of who you are, also, things like this can be made useful as a second factor for authentication, to authenticate yourself, right? To like actually be able to log in and to be able to verify that it's still you that's in control of the account. So this is actually one of the things that I might recommend for the future is to like actually, add a hardware chip into the card, right? And make the card itself capable of signing things. This is something that, cards in Japan can do. Taiwan is, has a, digital citizen certificate, can do these kinds of things. So this, another thing that's valuable, right? But like the fact that this exists, I think is really important. I mean, also stablecoin. Stablecoins are, I think, something that can be very great and very valuable. I think it's good to have more options for people to have payments. It's good for people to be able to continue to transact each other without relying on a centralized intermediary. It's good for even from a just sovereignty perspective to be able for people to be able to digitally interact with each other without having to rely on infrastructure that where all of it is controlled by like maybe three different companies that are based in the same other country. It's valuable for people to have something that's just very steady and just guaranteed to be there. I mean, it's I think 20 years ago, the gold standard was for something to be guaranteed to be there, it needed to be physical, right? And I think there's, still value in physical things, but like the quality of the internet is really getting better and better, right? And there's more and more redundancy in internet connections. There's, you got the cables and the satellites. And so I think being able to like actually build off of and leverage that is really valuable as well, right? But these are things that are happening now, right? So what could happen? I think there's two major directions that Palau can look in. And the first direction is just Palau as physical and or virtual base for blockchain projects. And the second is technology use inside of Palau infrastructure. This could mean government, this could also mean commercial, like this could also just mean like customer and merchant adoption. It could mean all kinds of things, right? And I think another part of this here is education, right? So helping the local people, get into the technology sector is always something that's valuable, but there's like a limit to how much, like things like university programs can help, right? Like I think for learning to really be effective, it needs to be hands-on, there needs to actually be opportunities for people to participate in things directly. So Palau is a physical and virtual based for blockchain projects. I think there is a big need for a lot of people in the crypto space today to just like have a jurisdictional like legal base that just makes it practical for them to do certain basic things, right? And so DAOs are one of the interesting trends that is happening recently, right? Projects are interested in setting themselves up in a way that's decentralized and a way that allows the community to participate in maintaining the project, governing the project, and these kinds of things. But the frameworks for allowing these kinds of completely virtual, completely on the blockchain entities to like actually interact with other things that already exist in the physical economy are not yet very strong, right? And there are a lot of models for legal frameworks that can improve on this, right? So there is the Wyoming DAO law, there is the token law in Liechtenstein, which is also it's pretty powerful. It allows you to basically put legal rights into tokens and into on-chain assets that could be tradable, and that's something that's usable for DAOs as well, because DAOs have on-chain addresses and they can hold tokens. Interaction with the real world economy in other kinds of ways, right? So there's a lot of ongoing interest in projects that are trying to tokenize real world assets, to things like fractionalizing existing real world assets, create more links between the on-chain world and the off-chain world that go beyond like just a stable coin. And so this is again something that I think a lot of projects are really looking for places where they can effectively do this. There's a lot of other categories as well. Like there's just launching tokens is one of those things that's where like there aren't really very good alternatives, and it's the sort of thing that's like hard, and ironically it does not get less hard if you're more scammy. Like I think you can even argue that it's if you're more scammy, it gets less hard, unfortunately, right? So like this is one of those things where like there isn't, it's not even just like a trade-off between protecting against scams and giving people more options. It's like there are opportunities to improve on both that really at the same time that haven't really been flagged yet, right? So I think there's opportunities to innovate in all of these. Palau is a physical base, and so as I mentioned, there's a growing number of individual digital nomads from all around the world. So it's I think maybe 10 years ago, people were maybe coming from the United States and other Western countries, but it's increasingly turning into a global phenomenon. People coming from anywhere, going to anywhere. Increasingly remote teams. Remote teams, this is something that's like very strong, especially in the crypto space, and definitely in the Ethereum community in particular, right? So if you think about like any other tech space, like if you look at AI, for example, like what city in the world is the global capital of AI? Right? You can show it. There's an easy answer. Right. Okay. Now, what city is the global capital of crypto? Right, exactly. The shrug is the correct answer, right? If you look at Ethereum's history itself, right, the project was first publicly launched at a Bitcoin event in Miami. A lot of the initial development happened by developers that were based in Berlin. The Ethereum Foundation was legally based in Switzerland. The like big parts of the development team are also based in Romania. There are client teams that are based in Australia. There's a growing number of researchers that's based in Taiwan, right? And Ethereum Foundation also has a base in Singapore. It's just like literally everywhere, right? And it's like there isn't even within the United States. So actually the closest thing the Ethereum Foundation has to an office is actually in Denver, right? So it's a very distributed thing, and I think there's this unique culture that's emerged in the space of like really going all in and embracing this, right? And that's there's frequent, like gatherings, retreats, and events, and at the same time, people are free to attend as many of these as they want, and otherwise, live wherever they want to get work done. And this is something that has really empowered a lot of people to participate in a way that is much more difficult in pretty much any other industry. So Palau was a place for people to come and stay longer term, and not even just people as individuals, but even entire teams. This is something that I think is very possible to try to encourage more of. And in terms of like practical advice for how to make this happen, I mean, honestly, the simplest answer is like the boring thing: have more direct flights. So direct to Singapore is great, but like add a couple of more, and make them more frequent, and I think that's already solves a big part of the problem. So I think there's a good opportunities for Palau to participate in both of these. And then the other side of the conversation is the technology, right? So we have basic digital IT, right? And we have basic stablecoins, but what can come after this, right? So in Zulu earlier this year, there was a project called ZooPass that was basically started just for the sake of experimenting in Zulu, but since then it's really turned into a much bigger thing that's basically become this much more ambitious projects trying to solve the question of like what would a privacy preserving and secure internet stack look like. So what we have here is a QR code, and this QR code contains a zero knowledge proof. And the zero knowledge proof proves that I am a Zulu resident without revealing which one I am, right? So there's a set of about 700 people that are able to generate these QR codes, but when this QR code reveals nothing more that I am one of these 700 people. There's also a digital version of this, so this is a phone app, and you can use it to sign into other internet services. And when you do that, you're again proving that you're a resident without revealing which one you are. And the system also basically generates a random ID for you. So if you sign in twice, you still get the same ID, right? So what this means is you can do things like make a ZK voting system. This also existed. It's called Zoopoll, zoopoll.org. It's still usable, right? And that basically lets you do privacy preserving and secure voting, just entirely based on top of this stack. So this sort of thing is powerful. It's powerful for a lot of different things. And I think there's a big set of things that this sort of thing can be expanded into that really go beyond like just this basic use case, right? So one of the features of ZooPass that was added kind of later on, closer to the end of Zulu, was this thing that they call stamps. So if anyone here is, an Ethereum person, they're familiar with POPE, the proof of attendance protocol. This is basically that, but in zero knowledge, right? So you can get stamps that attest that you participated in specific events, that you were contributed to particular things, prove that you have certain skills, all kinds of things. And these stamps are part of your wallet. But the world doesn't see what stamps you have by default, right? If you want to prove specific things, you can. If you want to prove some calculation over the things that you have, you can, right? And this is something that is useful for, I think, all kinds of things, right? It's useful for credit, for example, just as a way for people to track evidence about things that in their personal histories that prove that they're trustworthy in a certain sense. And potentially you could imagine an ecosystem where people use these things to apply for loans, and you're able to really benefit from a much richer amount of information about yourself that would really incorporate a lot of often even less formal things that don't show up in university degrees, for example, and do things in a way that preserves more privacy, right? So this is valuable, I think, and this is something that even existing digital IT systems can go and incorporate the technology, and I think there's a lot of value in trying to go in this direction. And then the other thing that is, I think, makes a lot of sense to talk about is just continuing to improve the stablecoin, right? So, it's good that it exists, and I think it's interesting, right? How in the blockchain space, payments were really how it all started. And I even remember back in 2013, there was this like very vibrant subculture around trying to get people to actually use and pay with Bitcoin. There was this person in Berlin. His name was Jörg Platzer. When he was the owner of a bar called Room 77, and at one point he decided that he would just go around as many of the other restaurants and stores within a few hundred meters of Room 77 and convince as many of them as he could to also start accepting Bitcoin. And he actually did. And there was this district called the Bitcoin Heats that got created as a result. And there are like over a dozen different restaurants and stores that could take Bitcoin. And like I remember from visiting Berlin and just staying in that region, I was able to use Bitcoin to like actually pay for a bunch of things. And I mean, back then, I think the pitch for Bitcoin was basically that it had lower fees. And it's not PayPal, you don't have to pay 30 cents and 3% for every transaction. But the challenge is, of course, that since then fees went up, and that basically ended up really killing this movement, right? Now, the good news is that now it's 2023, and we have all kinds of rapidly maturing, actually scalable and actually cheap payment systems. There's layer 2s, you have layer 3s, so there's like state channel technology. On the Bitcoin side, you have Lightning. There's even payment-focused rollups, things like Loopring that have been like extremely cheap ways of paying people for years now. So there's a lot of these different things that are actually possible, and the value that you get is that you get a very resilient payment system that can avoid depending on a centralized actor, just for people to continue to be able to make payments and have access to their money. And it's a system that I think could potentially also benefit a lot from just interacting with the existing Ethereum layer 2 ecosystem, right? Like if a merchant here accepts a stablecoin, someone coming in from abroad doesn't need to yet have that stablecoin, right? What they could do is they could even make a payment using whatever coin they already have, and that could get automatically converted into the stablecoin during the payment through some existing DeFi protocol on Ethereum, right? Like these are things that are actually possible, and so I think trying to really improve that interaction and make more of that happen is something that can be really valuable. But at the same time, you still need to do some more work on improving ease of use as this becomes more high stakes. Improving security is also more important, right? While a system is like a test and while it's fairly low stakes, it's okay if everything depends on an 80-digit number that's stored in your computer, but at some points you want to try to actually move beyond that, right? So there's a lot of technical work that can be done, but the good news is that there's this entire ecosystem that's continuing to do basically the exact same kind of work, right? And so there's a lot of things that you can really leverage and build off of, right? And I think that's probably the conclusion that I want to end with, right? Is that I think this technology has a lot of value in creating systems that are open and where you can see what's going on the inside. You can see what are the rules and be sure that the rules of the system are being followed, and give people the ability to individually go and check that if they say they made a payment, so that the payment actually happened. It's the technology that is completely open source. It's avoids being dependent on any kind of centralized actor. That whether it's a corporation or any foreign country. But the other big benefit of this is I think the benefits that come from being able to plug into a global community, and the fact that there are all of these other people that are building these existing open tools that you can just plug in and use, right? And that's much more powerful than just having to build your own entire thing from scratch. And so I think this is one of the reasons why it's valuable to have events like this, right? To try to bring people here together with people from this, the global community, and to try to start, making these links happen. And I think a conversation today can turn into a really amazing, technical project a year from now, and a really awesome application that benefits thousands of people here 2 years from now. So, thank you.